Well, good morning and welcome to Elevenses. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Train, and this is my twice weekly live webcast. It's show number 358. It's Wednesday, the 9th of August. It's quite a pleasant day outside at the moment. Hopefully the weather's perking up for the next few days. So, what have I got for you in today's show? Well, a fairly packed show, actually, considering I was going to try and keep this one fairly short, but anyway, hey-ho. Hero Motorcorp are under investigation for the second time in 2 years as they're being raided for financial misdemeanours. Pre-orders have gone on hold for the new Harley-Davidson X440 out in India. Something we tend to ignore but really ought to do is read the small print on insurance, and you'll see in a minute how that's left a UK tourist stranded in a Greek holiday after a scooter crash trying to crowdfund his recovery home. A new deal for Triumph means they'll be supplying Moto 2 engines for the next few years to the race series. The Japanese Big Four are teaming up to tackle the issue of micromobility, and the rumour mill is in full operation in the run-up to the big show season this autumn. And the question is, are Honda working on a new 404? And finally, today, in depth, if you're heading to France or even further afield in Europe, one of the systems that you must understand is the priority to the rights, priority à droit in France. And I will be telling you exactly how to do that and what you need to look out for at the end of the show. So stay tuned, grab yourself a brew, sit yourself down, stay with me for the next 30 to 40 minutes as I run through my regular twice weekly look at topical news, controversial views and better biking tips. Right, just one extra thing to say this morning. This will be the last live show for a couple of weeks because I'm going on holiday, hopefully to coincide with some nice weather. The next 3 shows will be pre-recorded. Right, anyway, on with the news. Without further ado, what have I got for you today? Well, the first item is about Hero Motorcorp. Now, as I mentioned in the preamble, they're under investigation for the second time in 3 years. Motor Hero are in fact the world's largest two-wheeler manufacturer. And this time what's being looked at is money laundering and violations of foreign exchange rules. Now Hero, which has a market share in the Indian two-wheeler industry of about 46%, had previously been under investigation for alleged tax evasion back in March 2022, when the authorities raided no less than 25 addresses linked to the company, including the chairman's home. Now this time with the company back under scrutiny, Enforcement Directorate officers were seen at the Hero offices in Delhi and Gurugram, as well as the home of the Hero's CEO, Pawan Munjal, and they were raided on Tuesday. Now, the investigation comes shortly after one of Munjal's aides was found in possession of an amount of undeclared foreign currency. So, despite the release of a statement promising, quote, to extend all cooperation to the agency, the result was an immediate 4% drop in the Indian manufacturer's share price. However, it's not all doom and gloom for Hero. The company has been, as you know, in partnership with Harley-Davidson to build the new X440. This is a picture of the bike here. And they've actually been forced to stop taking pre-orders for the bike because they have received more than 25,500 orders for the model, which isn't even being built yet. Now, India's largest bike builder, as I said, they are in partnership with Harley on this one. They said on Tuesday that 2/3 of the orders were actually for the motorcycle's top-end variant rather than the basic model. That's priced at 269,000 rupees, and that's around £2,550. I'm sure when it turns up in the UK it'll be a lot more expensive than that. Now, the success comes despite Hero actually having hiked prices for the bike by around £100 last month, and that led to a stock market recovery after the drop for the previous Hero story of 4% plus. So, none of us like wading through small print, and excuse me, frankly, when buying insurance, it's an absolute must to do, even though there are usually reams and reams of the stuff, and because we really don't want to fall into the kind of trap that has stranded Mark Jepson from Allerton Bywater in a Greek hospital in Zante. Now, Mark was on holiday on the Greek island with his wife Carol 2 weeks ago when they went motorcycling. Now, although the scooter was said to be travelling at 25 miles per hour or less, Mark fell off on a bend. Now, Mark, said to be a keen scooter enthusiast, he fractured his scapula. Rather more seriously, though, he broke several ribs, which also punctured a lung, and that resulted in a subcutaneous emphysema. Now, fortunately, 2 paramedics, excuse me, who were also on holiday, they stopped and they took the couple straight to hospital as they realised that they could not wait for an ambulance to turn up. Now, Mark is still in hospital undergoing treatment while his wife provides personal care. Apparently that's something that's not provided in Greek hospital. It's relied upon family members to do that. And so they won't be able to fly home for at least 3 weeks because of his injuries, and it's been recommended that he be flown home in an air ambulance rather than on a commercial flight. Now, here's the really bad news. The couple took out holiday insurance, as almost all of us, of course, are sensible enough to do, but it has been declared void in the terms of the crash that he had. The policy, which would have covered them up to £15 million, only covered him to ride a motorcycle of up to 125cc, and the machine they rented was 200cc. Now, their son said that clause was on page 81 of the 86-page insurance agreement. I can't help but feel a lot of sympathy with Mark, and I can't have to say that I also feel a bit of frustration when clauses like that are actually concealed in such depth in the policy. But it really is absolutely vital that if you're going to ride a hired motorcycle, you do actually check exactly what you are covered for. If it says 125 in the document, then book yourself a 125, or if you can't get a 125, don't go motorcycle riding. And if you genuinely really want to ride a motorcycle on holiday and it's not just a one-off sort of snap decision, get a policy which you know covers motorcycling and that you know exactly what you're covered for. So sadly, the family have had to set up an online fundraiser, and they promised to donate any surplus cash they get to the Yorkshire Air Ambulance, but obviously the primary function is to actually get Mark home. So best wishes to them, and I hope that they do get home at a reasonable point in time. Now, as I said, don't forget, if you do have a question, anything you want to comment about on any of the stories, do drop me a line. I'll always try to get back to you live on air if I possibly can, and if I can't do that, I will answer you after the show. Right, okay, so what else is in the news? Well, Triumph Motorcycles, they have signed a new contract, which means they remain the engine supplier to the Moto 2 class. It deal extends their partnership, which sees Moto 2 riders racing with the 795 triple engine until 2029. Now, the motor isn't standing still, of course. There are improvements scheduled, apparently, to the gearbox selection. That's ready for next year, 2024. And there will also be a new full race gearbox, which should be seen on the 2025 bikes. And, of course, what Triumph learn out on the track does tend to feed back into the road engine. So Steve Sargent, who's Triumph's Chief Production Officer, he says that over the last 5 years Triumph has, quote, used the race engine program to drive enhancements to the 765 engine and gain insights and learnings that we've used to develop further and evolve our street triple 765 range. Our reputation for bulletproof durability, reliability and class leading performance has grown, driving our global sales. Well, I certainly hope so. I have heard the odd horror story about bikes with gearbox problems in that range, so hopefully that definitely will feed forward into the motorcycle itself. Now, next little story up, as well as partnering up to develop low-powered electric motorcycles based around their Gakacho, I think is the name of the swappable battery format, which will use small drop-in batteries and battery charging stations to extend range. Now, the Japanese manufacturers, the big four, Kawasaki, Suzuki, Honda and Yamaha, they're covering all the bases obviously here, because they have also agreed to work to develop hydrogen powered internal combustion engines for small mobility. Now, as I've talked about in the past, Japan does seem to be putting a lot of faith in hydrogen engine technology. They have done a deal with Australia to have Australia do the dirty work, produce the hydrogen, and they'll ship it on in hydrogen powered liquid hydrogen ships to Japan. But what do they mean by micromobility or small mobility? Well, as well as motorcycles of low capacity engines, it's likely to include mini vehicles. Presumably by that they mean the sort of all-terrain and off-road quads, mini cars and light vans, outboards, small marine vessels, construction equipment, snowmobiles, jet skis, golf carts and even drones. And they will also be looking at small multi-purpose engines for the likes of lawnmowers and generators. Now, they have received approval from Japan's Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry to form a Hydrogen Small Mobility and Engine Technology Research Association. Kawasaki Heavy Industries and Toyota Motor are supporting members of that. Right, okay, so moving on. Let's have a look. Whoops, that's the Harley again. I want to get rid of that and go past it to the next one. That's it. What's going on in the world of motorcycling? Well, the silly season rumour mill is in full swing. And one of the more interesting of these rumours is that the idea that Honda may be in development of a brand new 400cc inline four-cylinder powered bike. Now, the source of the rumour, as per the graphic you're about to see, is the Japanese motorcycle magazine Young Machine, and they are often seen as a source for reliable information because it appears that sort of early leaked news of upcoming models goes to them first before it goes anywhere else. And some of what they predict actually does head out to the showroom. So let's have a look at one of the bikes that's suggested here. Let's just zoom in on that, give you a slightly better look at it. There it is. You can see the Young Machine logo all over the rendering there. Now, arguably, Honda's CB404 from the 70s was the iconic mini superbike of its time. The 78 F2 model in maroon, that was my very first big bike, and I put over 85,000 miles on that machine, including a dinner table stripped down in my flat and complete rebuild. Before that, bike was sadly stolen. Now, three variants of the suggested new model have turned up. This half-fared bike, for example, would be a straight replacement for the CB400 Super Bordeaux bike, which a machine I always liked the look of, and would have certainly considered had it ever made its way to the UK, but never did, of course. So I quite like the look of this one too. I think the colours are a bit classic, aren't they? And if you look closely at the exhaust system, the render gives it that sort of slightly classic looking there's a little bend in there which just echoes the original 404 beautifully. I think it just does actually just look such a lovely exhaust system, that one. Definitely not worth covering up. Now, what else has been hinted at? Well, there are two other machines that have been suggested. One, not surprisingly, would be a naked, a Super 4. Perhaps slightly less expected might be the third bike in the trio, which would be a CBR 400RR, a sort of sporty full fairing model, which would presumably be seen as a direct competitor for the new ZX4 are, at least new to the UK. It's just appeared in showrooms here, and that bike does produce a fairly remarkable 80 horsepower at 15,000 RPM. Now, whether the Honda would get anywhere near that isn't clear. And one suggestion is that the motor on this new 400 would actually be a derivative of the 650 engine on the CB 650R, which has been around at block for a few years, and that bike in 650 format only puts out a few more horsepower than the Kawasaki. How much power? Well, probably mid-50s, 60 horsepower or something would be a reasonable guess. How likely is the new 400 to appear? Well, it's worth remembering that Honda did have that four-cylinder in the range until 2022, the CB 400 Super 4 and the Super Boldor final edition. They also, of course, were powered by a 399cc water-cooled engine. So whether that would be made Euro 5 compliant, who knows? But as of course, you probably guessed, this is all rumour right now. The bike is a CGI image, no matter how pretty it looks. But I have to say, I wouldn't turn my nose up at that 400 Boldor model if it arrived in the UK and if it arrived at an affordable price. But one rumour that I think is very, very unlikely to turn to reality is the suggestion that Honda are also working on a CBR 250RR four-cylinder, which obviously would take on the Kawasaki ZX25R. I very much doubt that one would appear. Right, okay, since it is summer, sort of, I'm going to move on to the second instalment on my mini-series on riding in France. Now, this all kicked off after a recent discussion on my sort of favourite bike forum, because what I realised, again, listening to people discussing road rules in France, was that there's still a lot of confusion about what actually are the rules in what is our closest continental neighbour. One of the statements I read was about how riders on roundabouts have to give way to entering traffic in France, and frankly that's completely incorrect. It's not been the rule since I think the late 70s, maybe the very early 80s that was changed. It's 40 years out of date, that information, but people are still reporting it online as if it's the truth. Anyway, so roundabouts were last week's topic. So this week I'm moving on to something a little bit different, and that is the concept of priority to the right. So what is priority to the right? Well, in France it's known as Priorite à droite, and frankly there are riders spreading downright dangerous myth and disinformation about how this system worked. A couple of years ago somebody told me very categorically, they corrected me, very kind of them to do so. The fact they were wrong didn't seem to matter to them, but they told me very categorically that priority to the right doesn't apply in France anymore. And some other people told me that priority to the right only occurs in a few French towns and villages. And that's simply not the case. The priority to the right rule is alive and well, as the photo hopefully will tell you. And get this, it doesn't just apply in France either. You will find variations of priority to the right operating at unmarked junctions in Austria, Germany, Denmark, Greece, Italy, Ireland, Belgium, Spain, and the Netherlands. So that is a big chunk of the Eurozone. So even if riders are aware of the priority to the right system, they're often confused about where, how, and probably most important of all, why priority to the right actually operates. Now, given how important it is to know whether you have right of way or whether you're supposed to stop, it really is a bit of a mystery as to why UK riders are so completely clueless when it comes to this important traffic rule. So I will try to put that right. I will focus on the system as it works in France, because that's the country which is our nearest neighbour, and therefore it's the place we're likely to start our holidays. And the fact is, there are thousands and thousands of priority at droite junctions all across the country, and I can take you quite easily to a number of them within a few minutes of the ferry terminal exit in Calais. So here is the basic rule that you need to know. Even if you appear to be on the main road, as in sort of inverted commas, when you approach a junction where priority to the right actually operates, you must give way to traffic emerging from your right, even if you are on what appears to be the main road and that vehicle appears to be on a minor road. Now, of course, the opposite application of the rule exists too, which means that if you are approaching the junction which is on your left, then you have priority because, of course, you will be approaching that junction from the driver's right. Now, if all this sounds confusing at first, trust me, it's straightforward enough once the system of marking the junctions out is properly explained. But for some reason, I've never found that explained anywhere motorcyclists hang out. It is actually available online, but not where motorcyclists tend to go. So let's start with the concept of the priority route. Now, many roads in France are priority routes where you have priority over all the side turnings on the stretch of road in front of you. So drivers wanting to turn onto or cross the priority route must give way to traffic on the main road. And you'll be told if you're joining a priority route with this special sign. It's a yellow diamond with a white border. Now, main routes between towns or bypasses around towns, for example, are almost always priority routes. So once you leave the built-up area, you will often pass this sign. So once you've seen it, you know you don't have to worry about priority à droite because you'll have automatic priority over emerging traffic at all the junctions until you reach the end of the route. And this is the sign that you will see when you do get to the end of it. So there's another sign, one sign to tell you you're on a priority road and this one to tell you you've come off it. So look for this sign here. Again, it's that yellow diamond with the white border, but this time that black diagonal strikeout stripe across the middle cancels your priority. Now, there are two ways that you are likely to, or two locations you're likely to encounter this particular sign. In the first instance, you'll see it where your own priority road meets and basically an even more important route. So having seen the cancel sign, you'll also be warned of what you need to do at the next junction. You may well see something like this, a bog standard give way sign, cédez le passage in French. Now, what it means, exactly what it means in the UK, it means that you are approaching give way junction, and as you can see, the distance there tells you that you're going to have to stop in 150 meters. Now, alternatively, when you actually get to the end of the road, you may find one of these, a stop sign, an octagonal red sign, again with a white border, and it's just like the one we have in the UK. Now, one other trick, in case you failed to spot the signs, you will also see road markings across the end of your road. Broken white lines mean give way, solid line means stop. So again, exactly the same as we have in the UK, nothing complicated. But the second instance in which you will pass a end of priority sign is if your priority road runs into a town or village, and what will normally happen is you'll get that cancellation sign to tell you that on all the junctions ahead you're going to have to check one at a time. If you're lucky, you'll get an additional reminder like this one here to tell you that there are priority à droite junctions ahead, but it's not part of the legally required signage, so you won't get it everywhere. You'll have to look out for that diamond with the cancellation bar through it. But what it means is that from now on you have to check each and every junction individually for priority. So, right, once you're off the priority road, how do you recognize how the junction is actually prioritized? Well, it's surprisingly simple once you learn the meaning of two different road signs. This is the first one. This is the you have priority sign. This means that if you are approaching a junction ahead, you have priority and vehicles in the side roads must give way to you. Now, contrast that sign, which is a sort of basically a sort of vertical cross with side roads coming in on the sides, Contrast it with this one, which is sort of an X shape. This is the second sign. It means you're approaching a junction, but the road you are on does not have priority. This means priority à droite operates, and if you find a junction to your right, you must give way if there is a vehicle trying to emerge from that junction. Now, in short, it's absolutely vital to learn to look for these two signs. This one here, the priority à droite sign, and this one here, the one that tells you you have priority at the junction. And remember to read them and understand what they mean, because if you don't, you're liable to learn the hard way that the vehicle will pull straight out in front of you on a junction with this kind of signage. Now, on one of my French training courses some years ago, it was a tractor with a trailer that shot out straight into the road from our right, straight in front of my trainee in front. But fortunately, he'd actually listened to the briefing that I'd given them on the train on the way over, and he'd already slowed right down, and so he was able to stop without too much drama. But he said later, when we were having lunch, that my briefing had actually saved him, because he had no idea how priority à droite operated in France, even though he'd been riding over there for years. And he said on prior trips he would have paid little attention to the sign, assuming that as we were on the big wide road on a fast sweeping bend, that we had right of way. And he said he would have been travelling at speed and he would have struggled to stop. The other two riders, incidentally, who were with us on that day, who I could see sort of disbelieving my briefing on the train, they were actually suitably shocked. So at least 3 riders learnt something on that day. Now, the only confusing bit from these, really from these signs for a UK rider, is that looking at them, you may be expecting to find a crossroads ahead, because that's what the sign suggests, isn't it? Crossroads, and again, a crossroads. But it turns out that the French do not have a sign for a crossroads. It simply means a junction. And so that could be a crossroads, or it could be a T-junction, and the T, the other arm of the T, could be to your left or your right. They simply use these 2 junction signs to indicate any arrangement of side turnings. So the only way to tell what the priority at the junction is to slow down and have a look if you're approaching a priority à droite junction. And remember, if the junction on a priority à droite junction is to your right, you have to give way. If the junction is to your left, then you have priority. But a big caution that's really explained: not every junction you'll come across with priority to the right actually has the warning sign. Typically, for example, in the middle of a town, if you're riding around on the back streets on a town, you will not get a warning sign, and so you have to do a double check by looking at the road markings themselves. Now, as in the UK, if you are on a priority road, the side turning to your right will have road markings across the end of it. They will either be the broken giveaway lines or the stop lines across the road, and you should be able to see these from the road as you approach. Occasionally you'll also be able to see the backs of the signs that face the driver in that side road, which are either the giveaway or the stop sign. So exactly as you can sometimes do in the UK. But if you can't see the back of a sign, and if there are no road markings either, then the road to your right will have priority. You need to slow right down, be ready to stop if a vehicle appears to your right. Now, the difficulty is sometimes deciding whether what you're looking at is actually a bona fide road or just a service access or something. But the simple answer is be careful whenever you see a road to your right which has no markings across the end of it. So, okay, what use is priority à droite? Well, for those not used to the system, and I'll be honest, it took me quite many years to figure it all out, it does sound bonkers, but in fact there's a solid practical application for the system. Priority to the right is nearly always used where the view out of a side turning is compromised. So in town, narrow street, narrow pavements, there'll be a building in the way, it'll be blocking the driver's view. So you'll come up to a junction like that and you'll find it's priority to the right, because it's the driver who can't see you coming easily, who wants to get out of that road. But it's when you get onto the really fast roads, the rural roads, that understanding the sign really matters, because you'll be travelling at speed as you come up to these junctions. So have a look at this road here, and I'm just going to blow that one up for you so you can have a good look at it. What's the priority at this junction? Hopefully, if you've been listening to what I've been saying for the last few minutes, you will realise that you have to give way to vehicles pulling out from your right as you find that next junction. The sign's obvious enough, but can you actually see where the junction is? It's on my old training routes, and we actually used to approach this junction twice, once from this angle, but also from the junction which is hidden up there on the right, and it is well hidden. If I just zoom in on the picture for a moment, about the only clue that you get is that you can see those signs there which are actually pointing to bed and breakfasts, but you cannot see the side turning there at all. It's completely invisible. So unless you spot that warning sign and you react to it, you are liable to have a vehicle pulling straight into your path. It's completely blind from this direction. Okay, let's have a look at it from the other angle. This is the view out of the side turning, and you can see why it's priority à droite. Because basically, while you're looking to your left here, there is a bank on your left with a bush on top of it. There's also a bank on the other side of the road, but at least you can see traffic coming in the other lane, because everybody's driving on the other side of the road, if you remember correctly. So in the UK, this would almost certainly be a stop junction, wouldn't it? Nice solid line across the end of the road saying stop, look, and then what are you going to do next? Well, you're going to have to edge out into the road, hoping that nobody is coming flying around that corner cutting your nose off. And that problem is that you cannot see very far around the corner because, remember, that bank is in the way. That, remind you, is the view from the other side of the road. If you look, you can see the electricity pylon there, and there's the matching electricity pylon. So now you know where the side turn is because you've seen both angles of it. But if you couldn't see both angles, or you don't know the road intimately, the only warning you have is that warning sign there, which tells you that you are going to have to give way to vehicles pulling out of here. So what I would say is this: rather than think of priority à droite as something of a daft system, think of it as a dangerous junction sign. Think of it as telling you to slow down and reduce speed now, just like the signs would do in the UK, but with that extra element of compulsion that you must let somebody out of that side turning if they are trying to get out of it. Now, a couple of final cautions. Most locals are pretty cautious when they pull out of junctions like this. They will probably edge out fairly slowly. They may even wave you past. That has happened when we've actually pulled up to let somebody out of these particular roads. But there are still a few elderly drivers and that farmer of that tractor who will blast straight out of a priority à droite and rely on you to give way to them. And of course there's always the risk of meeting a UK tourist who doesn't understand the rules. So that is it for today. I really do hope that you've gained a broader understanding of the European system priority to the right, and you'll be better equipped next time that you ride off to France and beyond. Maybe you can help support me via my Ko-fi page and keep the shows and the informative articles like this coming, because it does take a surprising amount of time to research them properly to ensure that you are getting accurate information to take with you to enjoy on your own holiday. Well, that's it for today. As I am off on holiday myself, as I mentioned earlier, the next 3 shows will be recorded, so bear with me on that one. I will respond to comments as and when I can, but they will be recordings. So if you are out there on the bike today, as I say, it's quite a nice, pleasant, quiet, sunny morning down here in London and warming up a little bit. Do make sure that wherever you are riding, that you stay shiny side up. Thanks again for looking in. I'm Kevin Williams, and this has been Elevenses. See you live in about 4 shows' time.